Picture this, you're 25 years old, fresh out of college, and you owe $40,000 to various lenders. Every month, nearly half your paycheck disappears into a black hole of minimum payments. You can't sleep. You can't breathe. You feel like you're drowning in numbers that just keep growing, no matter how hard you try. This was my reality 3 years ago. $22,000 in student loans, $15,000 spread across for credit cards, and another $3,000 in personal loans. But here's what changed everything. I stopped treating this as just a math problem. I realized debt is fundamentally psychological. And psychology has been studied for over a century. The breakthrough came when I discovered something fascinating about human behavior and money. Researchers have found that our relationship with debt triggers the same neural pathways as addiction. Think about it, the temporary high of buying something, followed by guilt and shame, then the cycle repeats. I was literally addicted to spending money I didn't have. Here's something most people don't know: consumer debt as we know it today didn't exist for most of human history. Credit cards were only invented in 1950. For thousands of years, humans operated on simple principles: you worked, you saved, then you bought. Religious texts across cultures warn against the dangers of debt because ancient wisdom understood something we've forgotten. So I developed what I call the Trinity method, combining psychological principles, historical wisdom, and spiritual discipline. The first pillar, radical honesty. I wrote down every single cent I owed, every interest rate, every minimum payment. This wasn't about shame. This was about facing reality. You cannot defeat an enemy you refuse to see clearly. Next came the psychological rewiring. I used a technique called future self-visualization. Every morning, I spent 5 minutes imagining myself completely debt-free. Not just the money part, the feeling of freedom, the pride, the peace of mind. Neuroscience shows that visualization literally rewires your brain, creating new neural pathways that support your goals instead of sabotaging them. Then I made the most important decision of my entire journey. I chose the debt avalanche method over the popular snowball method. Yes, paying off smallest balances first feels good psychologically. But I did the math. By targeting my highest interest rate debt first, that brutal 24.99% credit card, I would save over $8,000 in interest payments. Sometimes the best psychology is cold, hard mathematics. Here's where most debt advice falls short: they tell you to cut expenses without addressing the deeper issue. I didn't just reduce spending, I completely reimagined my relationship with money. I studied minimalism, Buddhist concepts of non-attachment, and Stoic philosophy about distinguishing between wants and needs. My apartment became a temple of intentionality. Every object had to justify its existence. Cutting expenses only gets you so far. I needed to attack this from both sides. I started freelance writing in the evenings, sold everything I didn't absolutely need, and picked up weekend shifts at a local restaurant. But here's the key: every single extra dollar went directly to debt. Not 90%, not most of it, literally every penny. I automated transfers so I couldn't make emotional spending decisions. Month 18 was my breaking point. I'd paid off $28,000 but still owed $12,000. I was exhausted, burned out, and questioning everything. That's when I remembered something from religious history: the concept of tithing, of giving your first fruits, not your leftovers. I realized I'd been paying debt with leftover money instead of making it my absolute priority. I restructured everything around debt elimination, not around my comfort. The last 6 months were a sprint. I moved in with roommates to cut rent in half. I sold my car and bought a used bicycle. I meal prepped every single meal and hadn't eaten at a restaurant in 4 months. Friends thought I was crazy. But every sacrifice brought me closer to something they didn't understand: true freedom. Not the fake freedom of buying whatever you want, but the real freedom of owing absolutely nothing to anyone. On March 15th, exactly 2 years and 4 months after starting this journey, I made my final payment. $40,000 in debt, completely eliminated. But here's what I learned: this was never really about money. It was about becoming the type of person who keeps promises to themselves. It was about understanding that every financial decision is a psychological decision. And it was about rediscovering ancient wisdom in a modern world designed to keep us trapped in cycles of consumption and debt. The freedom isn't just financial, it's psychological, emotional, and spiritual. And now I want to help you find that same freedom.